consultations.
Okay, moving on to under Part 1 of the bill, Section 8, Sub 1, Sub E. It says, it's talking about how unless authorized under this Act, it is prohibited, Sub E says, for an individual to possess more than 4 cannabis plants that are not budding or flowering. If somebody could please explain to me, does that mean that you could potentially possess more than 4 plants if they are budding or flowering?
Chair, I don't think anybody at this table here is in a position to answer that question to the Honourable Senator, but we could certainly...
You're going to be in a position to train officers? All the people at this table would be highly involved in training officers in Canada, and you don't know right now the answer to that question?
I think I'd like to refer that question to my colleagues at the Department of Justice, just to get a clear answer and a confirmed answer for you, Senator.
Can they give it to me right now?
We have in attendance the representative of the Department of Justice. I see Monsieur Saint-Denis, Madame Labelle, that we have had the opportunity to listen to last night. So could you, Monsieur Saint-Denis or Madame Labelle?
So the question is, how many budding plants?
And I see Madame Morancy also, but she's hiding behind Mr. Bob Singh. So the chair has some problem to make sure that she's in the room.
The question is, the section right now is written in C45, Section 8, Sub 1, Sub E, for an individual to possess more than 4 cannabis plants that are not budding or flowering. So does that mean that you could potentially possess legally more than 4 if they are budding or flowering?
No, in fact, it's the opposite. You're allowed up to 4 plants if they're not budding, and you're not allowed to possess any plant that is budding.
You're not allowed to possess any budding or flowering plants.
That's correct.
0.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
I said that correctly?
Yes.
Do you think that's a good way to put that out in here? Because to me, that's very, as someone who's looked at a lot of statutes in her life, as practicing law for I don't know if Canadians would actually realize that they're not allowed under your bill to possess any budding or flowering plants. It's illegal after this act is passed to possess any budding or flowering plants.
But the limitation, I just want to point out that the limitation is in public. So, I mean, it's got to be read in concert with the provisions dealing with production of cannabis, which states that you're allowed to produce up to 4 plants. You're allowed to cultivate up to 4 plants in a dwelling house. You just can't have any budding or flowering plants in a public place.
That part is not, it doesn't say about the public place. It's Section 8(1)D that talks about for an individual to possess in a public place 1 or more cannabis plants that are budding or flowering. That's the prohibition for D, but for sub E, it's for an individual to possess more than 4 cannabis plants that are not budding or flowering. It says nothing about public place
that's
anywhere
correct.
In that section.
So you're allowed to possess in public or otherwise up to 4 plants.
But you're telling me that after this bill is passed, Canadians are not allowed to possess any marijuana plants that are budding or flowering. They will be in violation of C45 if that's the case.
In a public place, yes, that's the limit.
It doesn't say anything about public place in that section.
It does in paragraph 8(1)D.
Yes, so but that's a different subsection, and it doesn't seem to apply. You wouldn't normally apply a subsection D to subsection E if there's no reference.
No, but the subsection E talks about a plant that is not budding or flowering.
Yes, that's right.
So those are the plants that you're allowed to possess up to 4.
I know that, but I'm just telling you that I don't think that your statute is potentially well written on that front, and I think that Canadians will have a lot of confusion and would be quite surprised to hear this particular part of their conversation. Thank you.
Oh.
Oui, voulez-vous ajouter, Monsieur Saint-Denis?
Anything to add, Mr. Saint-Denis? My colleague from Health Canada, John Clare, might wish to add something.
The way the statute works, it's prohibited
for anyone to produce more than 4 cannabis plants in a dwelling. There is a possession limit, effectively, that no one can possess more than 4 budding or flowering plants. That's what E states. And D states that in a public place, you can't possess any budding or flowering plants.
Your colleague from Justice Canada just told me that you can't possess even 1 budding or flowering plant.
In a public place. And
You
in
also-
any place, you can't possess more than 4.
But your Justice colleague told me that public place or otherwise, you can't possess any 0 budding or flowering plants. And I asked for clarification, and you said that I was...
No, I'm sorry, that perhaps I was misunderstood. The provisions clearly says that you cannot possess in public any budding plant. So not one, not any, in a public place.
That's what D says.
That's
but
correct.
E makes no reference to public place.
Right. E says that you can't possess more than 4 budding or flowering plants anywhere.
No, E says you can't possess more than 4 cannabis plants that are not budding or flowering. Anyway, I think we'll need some further clarification at a future point. Thank you.